Lots of news out of 49ers OTAs, coaches, assistant coaches, players. Trent Williams is back as well. Tons of notes and insight on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A live, rare morning pod here on Thursday morning. We weren't able to get one done on Wednesday evening, so a little bit later for you if you are an audio listener and a video listener on this Thursday episode, and tons of new intel and information from a bunch of coaches and some players. I want to dive a little bit more into the coaches and what they had to say about the team on today's show. Croc, first I want to thank everybody for making this your first listen, and make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. If you're new, welcome to the show. You got to sub up wherever you are watching or listening, and if you're already subbed, hit the thumbs up. Let us know you stopped by. I see some of you folks already jumping in the chat with us today too, as well as we're going live on this Thursday morning. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com to get started. Let's start with Trent Williams, Croc. And we expected him to be there, but he wasn't there early in the process. And obviously, it's mandatory stuff. He did show up to OTAs and got some videos of him on the field and seeing him run around. And, you know, it's good to have that anchor of the offensive line back, because it's been one of the big questions about the 49ers team coming into the year and after the draft, not really addressing much except for a seventh rounder. And it's pretty clear that the 49ers like their offensive line more than everybody else does, and not super worried about the depth and not super worried about replacing any of the starters that they have, and just getting clues from how they are practicing and which guys are taking reps. And obviously a lot can change with the reserves, but I think we know exactly what this offensive line is going to look like with Trent Williams at left tackle, Ben Barch taking reps with the ones, being the veteran holdover at left guard who looked good filling in for Aaron Banks last year when he was hurt. You got Jake Brendel, some notes from Chris Forster on Jake Brendel at center. Dominic Pooney, who was a star right away, rookie last year going into year two at right guard, and then Colton McKivitz at right tackle. That's the starting lineup. There's unless there's injury, those are going to be the starting five. But it was nice to see Trent Williams back and know that, you know, there's not any weird like contract stuff or, you know, anybody was thinking about retiring before the 2025 season or anything like that.
I wonder if he listened to the last podcast or one of the last podcasts when we were talking about wanting to see him out there and knowing he would be out there for probably, you know, mandatory mini camp, obviously training camp. We expect him to return, but he is getting a little bit older. So just being a part of a process of bringing him back into the fold, kind of easing him into a situation, being able to work out with his teammates and be a mentor to some of the young guys that they brought in on the offensive line. I think it was good seeing him out there.
A quick note from Chris Forster, 49ers offensive line coach, and just, you know, the way that some fans talk about Jake Brendel, and I'm looking at the quote here. I want to get it right word for word, and shout out to Jake Hutchinson, who has the transcript here of a quote about center Jake Brendel from 49ers offensive line coach Chris Forster. Quote on why the coaches like him and why, you know, he's not going anywhere, and they're not trying to replace Jake Brendel at center, and they were not trying to replace Jake Brendel at center. About Jake Brendel's 2024 season, Chris Forster says, quote, fewest amount of missed assignments. His pass protection was the highest grade. His run grade, pass protection grade, and mental errors were the best they've been since he's been here. They've been better than any center that we've had playing here up to this point. So that's how Chris Forster thinks about Jake Brendel, who, by the way, he coached in Miami as well. And they've been together for a little while. And so he went from undrafted rookie with the, I think he might have actually, I don't know if he was signed by the Dolphins as the undrafted player, but he did play with the Dolphins and played a little bit with Chris Forster there. And then obviously they brought him over here to the 49ers. And so clearly the 49ers like him a lot. 49ers fans want him replaced. And we're talking a lot about centers in the draft. Niners didn't really go there. That's the starting five, and it's a solid starting five in the 49ers minds. And then, you know, we can talk about some depth, and Spencer Burford is again in the second practice that media was able to see, again working in behind Trent Williams as the left tackle. So Burford clearly in the mix at swing tackle more so than in a competition for that left guard spot. So it is Ben Barch's job at left guard, and it's looking like we're going to get to see Spencer Burford take over for Jalen Moore in that swing tackle and back up to Trent Williams' role at left tackle.
No, I think when you look at the 49ers offensive line, I think it is fine, right? But it's just that it's fine. It's not this great offensive line. I don't think they've invested the resources into the offensive line that is definitely the fan base would like to see them do. And the tough thing with where they're at, right? They're kind of just right there in the middle. I think the fan base has this perception of them as being one of the worst offensive lines in the league. They are not. They're right there, just middle of the pack where, hey, we're not great, right? It's not the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, but it's not the Houston Texans offensive line either, which is probably the worst in the entire NFL. The issue with having a middle of the pack offensive line is, you just never know when it's going to snake bite you. You never know when maybe having a liability here and there, or maybe even at the center position is going to be a time that bites you in the rear end. And we saw that when Spencer Burford had to fill in for Joe, the right guard.
Joe
in the Super Bowl. Feliciano.
John Feliciano. Thank you. That's
John
right.
Feliciano. Excuse me.
John Feliciano.
So John Feliciano had to fill in, and then in just that moment, right? Like nobody probably even gave a damn that Spencer Burford was in that game up until that point. And then when something happens like that, it just gets magnified because like, whoa, like what happened here? And I think those are the moments that you want to try to mask as much as possible, and you hope just don't happen. But ultimately with the 49ers, and especially whether the team believes is, hey, when I say team, I mean front office, but yeah, we would love to do better, but we don't feel like there's a valuable option out there for us to do better than where we're at. And we have a decent offensive line. It's not great. It's not terrible. And there's also a saying in sports and coaching, it's never as bad as you think it is. It's never as good as you think it is. So right now, it's probably not as bad as you guys think it is, but it might not be as good as the 49ers think it is.
It's a race to the middle with the 49ers offensive line. My thoughts on the offensive line is more about just developing talent and, potentially being better with the starting group. But really, it's a future starting group. And it's usually, unless you're just going to continue to bring in the Ben Barches of the world and patch it up that way, where's the next like cost-controlled, good starting, especially offensive tackle? And it's getting in front of us what's obviously going to be some huge needs at the future of that position. And it's a position that takes some time for guys to develop. And so, next offseason, you can't be like, oh, we're going to need 3 new starters on the offensive line like they did on the defensive line. It's a lot harder to get guys ready to go and start there as rookies. So that's kind of my view on the offensive line. Wasn't so much as are they going to be awful this year? It's like you got to start developing some guys in-house for the future. And it seems like they just never like offensive linemen enough in the draft to draft their own guys and develop. But Trent Williams is back, so that's a good sign for the 2025 49ers for sure. A quick note from Nick Bosa, who did say at 49ers OTAs that if the 49ers did sign his brother, which Nick thought for maybe about 5 minutes, it was a possibility this offseason. Joey ended up signing with the Buffalo Bills and is already injured, a calf or a quad or a hamstring or whatever it is. So he's going to be on the shelf till training camp, which shouldn't be shocking to anybody. But he did say that he was going to keep 97. Nick was. He wasn't going to give that up to his brother or anything like that. So there's some excellent insight from Nick Bosa. One other,
his brother originally was number 99 for the Chargers.
Was he?
And then he switched over to 97. But originally he was 99. So if I had to guess, if he were to become a 49er, he would just go back to what his very first number in the NFL was, which was 99.
Neither one of them were in college for very long. Did they not cross over in college?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I'll fact check that as you're talking right
now. Farrell says in that our friend Guy Haberin, great pod, great dude, just sent a video on this offensive line. Apparently, offensive line ranked inside the top 15. Yeah, I think they were ranked 14 last year in like composite rankings. ESPN, PFF, all put together. They were the 4th. They are the middle of the road offensive line in the NFL. But you can't allow that to drop and get worse, right? And so that's kind of the worry as far as this year. Does Trent Williams look a little bit older? Is he a little bit more injured? Or you have less depth? Is Brendel playing not as well as Chris Forster is seeing it, and some things like that. Does Colton McKivitz revert a little bit back to where he was earlier in his career than last year? But his stock is kind of going up, and he played really solid last year. Does Barch get hurt? Does a season of Barch not look as good as just a few games of Barch that we saw last year? There are some reasons it could get below 14, 15, 16, and you're in the bottom half of the league. It's not a great look for your newly signed, very expensive quarterback and the rest of the offense and the running game and all that. So you can't get worse. And there's not a lot of reasons I could see the 49ers offensive line getting a lot better than where they were at 14th either. So that's probably the worry there is 14th is still kind of the ceiling of what they're going to be, because they're not going to be better necessarily than they were last year. Very likely.
Real quick on Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa playing at Ohio State. They did not cross over. Joey Bosa's last season was 2015, and he was drafted 2016. 2016 is when Nick Bosa showed up. So they just missed each other. If brother would have stayed for a senior year, they would have had the opportunity to play with each other.
Neither one of them stayed in college for very long. Those guys were on the I remember Joey Bosa, when scouts were talking about, we watched all the offensive linemen against Ohio State because we want to see them play against Joey Bosa. This is when Joey was like a sophomore. And so like the scouts and NFL teams have thought highly of the Bosa brothers for a very long time, knew about them probably before they even got to college and any of us knew about. All right, next, let's talk more coaches, notes on new quarterbacks coach Mick Lombardi, Gus Bradley, new assistant head coach, and tons of notes from Chris Kocurek on the 49ers revamped defensive line next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's NBA playoffs time, and as we hit June, it gets even more intense and gets down to it. And there's always something every night, highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, series-changing plays, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on that NBA playoff action because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live during games. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And how about an extra $200 in bonus bets to add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? That's right. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets, not just NBA, Major League Baseball every single day, tons of sports. And, of course, you can still bet on a ton of rookie props, bet on the Niners to win the Super Bowl, NFL futures at FanDuel, and weekly lines already. So make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Peacock, I know we're supposed to talk about press conferences, but there is a big topic going on right now, and I think in the chat right now they want us to address it. So I don't know if you've looked into any of the Brandon Aiyuk talk that's going on. There was this one right here. You guys got to talk about the Brandon Aiyuk fiasco again. I'm tired of it myself. But that's
I don't think there's
it's a big thing.
I'm not going to run with this one, Croc. There's nothing to talk about. He made an Instagram post. Who cares, man? I don't care at all. How about this? This is what I want to talk about with Brandon Aiyuk, because Leonard Hankerson, 49ers wide receiver coach, was asked about it. And it didn't sound like a disgruntled guy. He said he's acting like an extra coach in meetings. Right? So John Lynch said the knee's coming along well. There's a lot of people that have been coming at Brandon Aiyuk for reasons. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know if he wants to be a 49er. I don't know how long the 49ers want him to be around. But like what he posted something on social media, like, I don't care. Right. We were talking about this off the air. I'm more interested in what the pink stuff in the bag that Stephon Diggs had. Right. If we're talking about weird wide receiver stories, what's going on there? What is happening there? The league's not going to find him or anything, but it might be in thin ice already for D'Amico. D'Amico. He's over there in Houston, right? Diggs?
Yeah.
Diggs in Houston? Yeah, okay.
No. Diggs is in New England.
Oh, right. He was in Houston. Now he's in New England with Drake May. Drake May, he's a veteran wide receiver, not a dude partying on a boat.
Which, by the way, a guy coming off of a torn ACL, he looks pretty damn good. He's active. He's in OTAs. He's doing drills with the guys, helmet on and everything. And I watched him throwing medicine balls, sprinting out, cutting left and right, and really looking better than the player he was going up against, who's 100% healthy. So Stephon Diggs looking good pretty fast. He must be taking his rehab very seriously. But
Absolutely.
on the Brandon Aiyuk thing, the Brandon Aiyuk, it's a very odd scenario because he's placed in something that wasn't his fault, right? Almost go back to Trey Lance. Everybody's saying, well, Trey Lance didn't deserve to be picked that high. And it's like, well, maybe he wasn't supposed to be picked that high, but he got picked that high, and it really changed the way he was always going to be viewed really forever. And it's like a disastrous pick now. I think with Brandon Aiyuk, what is now looking at like a disastrous contract is kind of not his fault, right? Like, and I think now there's some resentment maybe on both sides of this thing, and the professional aspect of it, he probably really likes the guys. So hey, he's in the meeting rooms and he's acting as an extra coach and making sure things are going smooth there. But the other side of it is, it was a terrible contract negotiation situation, and we just looked at it as though this is negotiations or whatever. But for the 49ers to come back and say, well, we really didn't want to, we don't like that we did that deal. How do people expect him to be? Like, do you expect him for any of you, right? Like, let's say, hypothetically speaking, you got married, and then after you tied the knot, your wife is like, yeah, I kind of regret marrying this guy. You're gonna feel some type of way. and I think that might be a little bit what's going on. I think his beef is with the front office and the people that the decision makers, as opposed to his teammates, which is why he's still conducting himself as a good teammate or coach in the meeting room.
Yeah, I don't even know if he has that much animosity towards the team. I don't know. I think we're taking some weird stuff out of context. Like, guys say weird stuff on social media all the time, unless he actually says something straight up so we can understand it. And I don't think it's really all that much. And he's under contract.
He took a shot at you and I.
He took a shot, I think, at fans that are coming at him, right? Well, he's talking about, yeah, he's like, that's one thing. Like that, I take that. I think that's more offensive. You're talking about people over 30 years old need to shut the F up, right?
And just post pictures of your kids.
Dude, well, I'm doing exactly what he's saying. I kind of agree with him. There's a lot of people doing a little extra on socials. You got something else going on. Croc is building a program over there at Stag U. So that's like,
we're definitely not locked in on commenting on Brandon Aiyuk in this situation.
No. But at the same time, it's like Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, you're like, oh, everyone needs to be quiet. Well, okay, take your own advice, dude. You're only creating more BS for yourself. So like, that was my initial thought. And I saw, I was like, how about we all STFU, right? Like, you can't tell everyone else that they need to shut the F up, and then you're like just being all weird on socials and trying to stir up more controversy. Like, you're just adding to it. You're just asking for more people to come at you with weird stuff. But and he's partly to blame. I think he handled it terribly with the contract negotiations last year. I think the 49ers handled it terribly too. So like, they're all to blame. Like, the situation they're in is just, it could have been completely avoided by everybody. And it's easy to see.
Think the 49ers are more to blame because they did not want to pay him that amount of money.
And then they didn't have the guts.
If you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Right. They didn't have the guts at the end. Kyle Shanahan goes in and squashes the trade last minute, right? So that's a lack of leadership right there. Like, pick one. You have your number, you do it, or you trade it. And they kind of just wishy-washed their way through it. But Brandon Aiyuk was weird about the whole thing too. So I don't think there was really a good guy in the whole situation. I think they all screwed it up.
I remember Kyle Shanahan talking about the Super Bowl and asking if he would do things different. And he's like, the one thing he learned from that was, hey man, do things however you want to do it so that you are more than willing to live with whatever the consequences are from that. Right. So let's say Samuel Womack. They let Samuel Womack go. Maybe they did not want to let Samuel Womack go. Or maybe they did, right? Maybe they're like, you know what? We are good with letting Samuel Womack go. And he goes and he does well for the Indianapolis Colts, which he has. You can live with that because it's like, well, this was our decision. We stood on that. Man, we like the kid. That's great that he's doing well over there. But when you do something that you don't really want to do, you make a decision, especially one this big, and they're telling, like, John Lynch told us, like, well, we're looking into everything and whatever he said, right? It's just like, what the heck? You're basically saying, like, it wasn't something that went your way. And now we're hearing some of the reports that they didn't really like, and there's people disgruntled in the building. When you start hearing where there's smoke, there's fire. I put that on the 49ers to not have the cojones to say, you know what? Yeah, we don't want that amount like allocated to this receiver. So we're just not going to do it. But other teams were willing to do it. So if you would have just been like, all right, we don't want to pay that, but the Pittsburgh Steelers or whoever the hell, right? They are willing to do it. Well, I would have felt more comfortable with saying, all right, let's trade him. And hey, whatever happens from there and he does well, like that is great for him. But we weren't going to pay that amount as opposed to getting stuck in it. And then he tears his ACL. And now the fan base has turned against him. And the only way to get from underneath this is to go out there and ball, which is really high and lofty expectations for a guy coming off of an ACL injury.
Right. And I think it was so short-sighted because the 49ers were afraid to not have Brandon Aiyuk, not for the next 5 years, but they were afraid to not have him last year. Right. And my thing last offseason was like, okay, you can trade him. There will be wide receivers available. Like Devontae Adams became available in like 3 weeks into the season, right? And there's like a ton of guys. Like you can replace a guy for a year. And so I think the long-term deal was a short-sighted personnel move by the 49ers because they were afraid for that season right there. And then they didn't even get him, Brandon Aiyuk, because he came in so late and he wasn't that good and that he wasn't in midseason form when he was playing. Then he has the ACL, which who knows, was that related to a late ramp up too? So the whole thing got screwed up by everybody. But I agree with you, man. They didn't have the guts to do what the clear right thing to do was.
What I thought they would do, which was not pay him that amount because, again, they don't utilize him that way. They do view him as a good football player, and they do view him as someone who clearly helps them win. But they don't value it the same way financially with the usage. Again, was it 105 targets or whatever he was getting? Like, you know, when the guys, the CeeDee Lambs and the guys that you're paying 30 plus dollars to, those guys are getting 150 plus targets. Like that is a lot more targets than what the 49ers were allocating to Brandon Aiyuk. And for different reasons, right? 49ers have a lot of weapons. Cool. But we're not targeting that way. So why would you pay you that way? And that was my big argument. Like, let him walk. Because you can get Ricky Pearsall. I'm not saying you could get Ricky to be Brandon Aiyuk, but I think you can get some good production out of Ricky Pearsall. And we kind of saw that a little bit down the stretch. And we saw that with Juwan Jennings. The offense is essentially kind of, I don't want to say a plug and play, but if you're talented and you have a certain skill set, they can figure out how to get this kind of production out of you, even if it's not quite to the level of Brandon Aiyuk. But the way they were utilizing their guys, I didn't think that they should. I thought he would have been better suited, even for him personally, going somewhere. You want to be that year in and year out All-Pro guy and get 150 targets and be that guy that I believe you are. I thought he would have had to go somewhere else. And they signed something, and now both sides are upset by it.
The Steelers are still calling every team in the league about trying to add some more pass catching weapons, and so who knows? Maybe that's still on the table at some point in the future. We'll see with Brandon Aiyuk. Right now, he's, as far as the team is concerned, he's in meetings and he's working. He's on the football team, and hopefully he is, as John Lynch said, progressing well with his recovery from a knee injury. And as we know, things can be weird and then get fixed and be mended and be fine. So hopefully that's the way things go with Brandon Aiyuk if he is still disgruntled. Next, Croc, more notes from San Francisco 49ers coaches on this 2025 squad, including tons of notes on the defensive line next. One note from Brock Purdy talking about recruiting visits to Alabama with Mac Jones. And these guys know each other for a long time. And it's wild that Mac Jones was the top 15 pick and Brock Purdy was the last pick in the NFL draft. And I just wanted to throw it your way, Croc. What do you think? What would happen if like Mac would have taken a different school or Saban would have picked Purdy instead? Because in a lot of ways, they all ended up in the best possible spot because, I mean, Nick Saban won a national championship, right? So he's like fine with Mac Jones, the decision. Brock Purdy's a better quarterback. Would Brock Purdy have taken Alabama to more heights? Would he have like beaten out Tua or something? Like what would that have looked like with Brock Purdy at Alabama? And what if Mac went to Iowa State? Would we have ever heard of Mac Jones? right? So Mac Jones definitely made the right choice going to Alabama. He definitely wouldn't have been the top 15 pick in the NFL draft if he went to Alabama. And so Mac is definitely happy with his decision to go to Alabama. And then I wonder, where would Brock Purdy have gone in the draft if he would have ended up being a quarterback at Alabama? Or would he have been a backup and never won the job at Alabama?
The question you're asking is the same question that people have for Brock Purdy being the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, as opposed to some of these other guys in the situations that they're going into. Like that's the same question. Like, oh, what would it look like for Trevor Lawrence if he got drafted to the 49ers instead of Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah.
Or what would, Baker Mayfield, if he got drafted to the Niners and he's in this situation with Christian McCaffrey and Aiyuk and Debo and Jennings and Kittle and Trent Williams, and, the good defenses that they've had for a majority of Purdy's. Like that's the conversation. So it is tough because you never know. And maybe guys go where they're supposed to go. And maybe Purdy needed that situation in Iowa. Maybe that better prepared him to step in for the 49ers just because of all the experience he was able to gain. Like, how many years did Mac Jones start for? Like one?
I think one plus like one year. Yeah.
It was one, and I think he played like the bowl game the year before.
He might have played a few other games because didn't Tua get hurt?
Yeah, so maybe there were like a couple, right? But
1.5 seasons.
Purdy got to play 3.5 years as a starter, right? So I think maybe for Purdy and just who he is and what he is, maybe he really needed that time to play the ups and downs, and maybe those things made him a better professional, as opposed to a Mac Jones who kind of walked into a well-oiled machine and he's throwing to all these first-round draft pick receivers and first-round draft pick running back, and got the offensive linemen everywhere and the fastest, greatest defense, and and maybe that kind of hindered some of his ability to be able to go to a New England Patriots team. And although it looked okay his rookie year, but be able to go and be able to weather some of the storms that were coming his way, because it wasn't the best situation. And now, well, at the greatest of everything at Alabama, I haven't had to deal with this type of adversity because of that situation at Alabama. And now we kind of see is what it has become. So I guess I say all that to say, maybe they both went to the perfect colleges for them and what they needed to prepare them for what they currently are at the NFL level.
Yeah, and Purdy's definitely not going to give anything back, including the hundreds of millions of dollars in guaranteed money he just got paid. So he's happy with where he landed and ended up in the right spot, even if at the time he would have preferred that offer from Alabama instead of Iowa State.
They always say it doesn't matter. Like once you step into that NFL building, now there is roster politics for sure.
Yep.
But once you show up, you are just an NFL player. And eventually that roster politics kind of leash that you have ends up running short. It ran short on Trey Lance in 2 years, right? I mean, it ran short right away. So that thing, it can get pulled out from underneath you right now. And I think for some of these guys, they're seeing that.
Yeah, I teased a lot of the Chris Kaserik stuff. I think we're going to have to save that because we don't have a lot of time left, because I want to get into a lot of the 49ers defensive line and Chris Kaserik's comments on not only the rookies, but Bryce Huff as well, who saw this field for the first time wearing his number 47 that he wore. You're not wearing that number 0, Croc. Someone's already got that anyway, but we didn't love the number 0 for him. Going back to 47, where he had his 10 sacks with Robert Saleh with New York Jets. So Huff on the field at OTAs. Tons of notes on a bunch of young defensive linemen for the San Francisco 49ers from defensive line coach Chris Kaserik, amongst some others. I want to talk real quick about a couple of new coaches to end this pod. And then when we record either later tonight or tomorrow morning for the final pod of the week, we'll talk more about the D-line and Chris Kaserik stuff and any of the latest 49ers news. Mick Lombardi, new quarterback coach. This is I didn't really think much about this move in the offseason until yesterday, Croc, because Mick Lombardi, and he is related to Mike Lombardi's son, former executive in the NFL, and he was around the New England Patriots for a long time. So he's been around Brady and Belichick and been through that and experienced a lot of stuff, but he's not an ex-player. And I don't remember which reporter it is, because couldn't see who the reporters were. I think it was Eric Branch, though, that was asking the questions of Mick Lombardi. And clearly he's trying to write an article. But he was talking to him about, what's it like, gaining respect from the quarterbacks, not being an ex-player like most other quarterbacks coaches. And I didn't really think about that angle. And I'm not so worried about that angle. If you're a good coach, you're a good coach. But how much of Brock Purdy's success? I mean, Brock Purdy might not be a 49er if it wasn't for the 49ers' last quarterbacks coach. And Brian Griese, by all accounts, has been a pretty darn good quarterbacks coach. So, I mean, it's not nothing going from Brian Griese to just another quarterback coach, no matter who it is. So Mick Lombardi, I mean, that's something that the 49ers have to stick, because it's an important job in the building. And luckily, Brock Purdy's more fully formed, but and it was kind of unfair question. I felt bad for Mick Lombardi because he kept asking him questions about it. But like, is it hard to earn respect from these guys not being an ex-quarterback? He's like, yeah. So it was kind of a funny line of questioning. But it should not go unnoticed that the 49ers had to change a pretty important coaching position in the quarterbacks coach for Brock Purdy. So you hope that Brian Griese wasn't that huge of a cog in this thing and didn't have some magic dust he was sprinkling over Brock Purdy in that offense.
I think the biggest thing, right? And there is this element of being a coach and truly understanding exactly what that player feels. I know that from a defensive back perspective, and I can watch a cornerback and just, at the line of scrimmage and know what he's feeling based off of what that receiver is doing. I think that's a feel that you maybe can only get by playing. But a big part of the NFL is it's the mental aspect of it. Like, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. So even if you are a guy who didn't play the position at quarterback, if you're able to understand the 90% mental aspect of what Kyle Shanahan wants Brock Purdy to do and what that's supposed to look like in the sense of the timing within the offense, then who cares if you didn't play the game? I mean, how much of a difference does it make if I can't quite coach up your arm slot and what that's supposed to be looking like or whatever, right? Like, whatever. I need you to be able to throw to this guy. Like, in every position, coach would tell you that at the NFL level, like, the development of the physical aspect of things, it's not a huge aspect of these guys sticking around. They're freak athletes. All these guys have big enough or strong enough arms. All these guys have a certain level of mobility. All these receivers can run at a certain speed, or they win the way they win, right? The things that really make the biggest difference is your mental aspect of the game. And I think that's why Brock Purdy has done well to this point. It's like, well, I don't have the biggest characteristics, or traits throwing the football, but man, I'm sharp between the ears. And I think when it comes to your quarterback coach, I don't think it has to be Brian Griese. I think it just has to be somebody that understands what Kyle Shanahan wants. And if he truly understands the offense and where the ball is supposed to go, that's the biggest aspect of being able, in my novice opinion, that's the biggest aspect of being able to coach quarterbacks. I mean, shoot, I'm calling offense now. And I know if my quarterback messes up, I don't need to have ever played the quarterback position. I know what the reads are supposed to be. I know what they're supposed to look at. I know based on the defense and what that looks like. Did he make the right throw, or what's he thinking here? I don't have to play quarterback to know that. Matter of fact, I think it might have helped me coming from the defensive side of the ball, because now I understand that aspect of it. So I don't think it's an issue at all with Mick Lombardi being the quarterback coach, as long as he's on the same page with Kyle Shanahan with what he's looking for.
Yep, I totally agree there. And one thing that is different, according to Brock Purdy, is there's a lot of energy with Mick Lombardi, the way he runs his meetings. And that was one of the things I noticed with Brian Griese, because Brian Griese was on the fast track. Brian Griese could be a head coach in the NFL if he wanted to be. He was turning down interviews for other jobs. He could have been an offensive coordinator and climbed that ladder really easily with the work he did with the 49ers, with Brock Purdy. But man, every time he was interviewed, he seemed like he was beaten down. Like I don't think he liked coaching all that much. So at least they got a guy in there that wants to be doing the job in Mick Lombardi, and he'll bring some more energy to the group. And I do think that Brian Griese was a smart guy and had a lot to give to Brock Purdy and in a football team. And he turned down a fast track to being a head coach in the NFL. So he clearly did not want to be a coach.
Lombardi also made some good points on some of the things that they were looking to clean up with Brock Purdy. And essentially it was, you don't have to win the game. That's what I was hearing. It's like,
every step.
Yeah. You don't have to win every single play. You don't have to play hero ball. Let's just reel it back in and make the right reads, be accurate, make the throws, and if you do that, they'll be good. So that's obviously like a snippet of one of the things that he had mentioned, but that was something that kind of stood out to me.
Thanks,
And that
everybody.
might have led to some of the turnovers and some of the things in late games that we saw from Brock Purdy, like maybe feeling like, well, there is no CMC or Aiyuk, and Debo's not quite what we want him to be, and I don't have Trent Williams protecting my blind side. I have to win this game. Defense isn't as great. I got to win the game. And there were some forced throws late in some of these games that ended up being intercepted. We don't got to play that ball. Let's get back to just being efficient and taking what the defense gives you.
No doubt. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in on this impromptu Thursday morning rare live episode. We'll finish up this week talking about more of the defensive side of the ball. New assistant head coach Gus Bradley, Chris Kocurek on the defensive line, Bryce Huff, Johnny Holland, linebackers coach. Tons more notes on 49ers OTAs from the coaches themselves and whatever else is going on with the team. We'll have it covered every single day as we do right here, Locked On 49ers.